Hello and welcome to Inflection Point Conversations. I'm Michelle Obeda, an art director of 3D Artist. In this podcast series, I'll be interviewing experts in the fields of art, architecture, and visualization. Together, we'll take a deep dive into the disruptive topics that have reached an inflection point in our industry. If you're enjoying this podcast, please take a moment to like, rate, and subscribe. You can also comment and give feedback. I'd love to reach more people and grow this amazing community. Today, I'm talking with Evan Buxton. Evan is a principal and interactive director at Neoscape in Boston. He oversees the technical development and programming of all interactive projects at Neoscape, including real-time projects using Unreal, websites, interactive presentations, and mobile applications. Evan works with clients and creative directors to analyze what the client wants and what's feasible in terms of technology, budget, and time. His passion for technology, combined with a flexible and creative approach, makes him uniquely skilled at translating clients' needs into innovative, interactive solutions. Welcome, Evan.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate being here. Thank you for asking me to join.
Yeah, no, it's great. So I met you a few years ago, a little bit randomly. We had a talk about Unreal in real time. I feel like a little bit, you guys were doing it in Neoscape and you were doing a lot of R&D, but not all the companies that have now jumped onto real time had. So I felt like it was a very pertinent conversation. And I'm glad that it's taken the journey that it has. And I'd love to talk to you more about, because I guess you've been doing it in Neoscape for quite a while.
Yeah, we have been, and it kind of leads into kind of like what my main job is, which is to try to explore technology that may or may not have anything to do with, what we do as far as architectural visualization and, creating campaigns for our clients, to see if there's a way that we can leverage, that tech for our clients. A lot of our clients come to us for ideas. They actually don't know what they necessarily need. They just know that they need something. And so one of the best parts of the job is having that conversation and understanding where the friction is for them, what their issue is, and trying to figure out if there's something I've already seen that is the perfect solution for them. It's something that we kind of espouse at Neoscape, which is don't come to the problem with a solution. All this cool stuff out there. And, clients come to us with solutions sometimes, but we want to listen, and then, okay, what do you really need? And then try to figure that out. That's the puzzle of the job that never gets old for me.
Yeah. So you're the interactive director at Neoscape, and you've been working there for over 20 years. Do you feel like your experience with that allows you to have this really broad picture of what's possible?
Absolutely. My job, of course, has transitioned and transformed over the years. But one of the great things about Neoscape as well is they're looking for people to step up and say, I can provide, I can basically almost create my own situation and hopefully do well at it enough that it helps, the company, while at the same time, aligning with my personal goals and like the things that I like to do, which is why for me, this job has always worked out for me because I just love looking up and exploring technology and trying to integrate it in, what I do. It's not even work to me. Like I don't have to try to spend time finding tech. I'm always, finding tech. I can't help it. When I look at it, I'm surfing the web is just looking at technology and thinking, how can I use it for myself, use it for the company, et cetera. And so it has helped the company for sure. And again, myself, just being that go-to person along with others, of course, for like cool ideas that can be, usually refined, of course. It's usually like the stub of an idea based on some tech or what I might have seen. We then have to figure out how to actually make it useful.
Yeah. So your job title could be cool ideas guy, basically.
Yeah, it's funny. I've struggled oversells it. I have been thinking I need a different title just because of the types of clients I'm meeting, et cetera, now compared to, I don't know, 10 years ago. But then my head kind of says, I don't know what that is. So I just move on with my day. It's important to have a new title.
Yeah.
As I'd probably worry about it more, but I don't know if interactive director does capture it exactly.
Yeah. I find the concept of titles really fascinating because I feel like they take on more meaning than they need to in a way. And sometimes we give more meaning to them than they do. I'd love to talk about that a little bit. But first, I want to know, how did you get into Arch Viz and what brought you to Neoscape in the first place?
So I originally went to school for sign painting. I've always been
Cool.
fascinated with beautiful signs, especially the
Mm,
hand carved gold leaf,
yeah.
gilded signs. So I went to school to learn how to do that, and I did that for about 5 years. And it was and still remains interesting to me. But around 5 years in, the place that I was working, I was just making a lot of political signs and for sale signs. There's not too
Mm,
much you can do with those. They need to just get the information out there. You can't really have too much creativity. So for me, at the job I was in, the company, I just decided I need to look at something else. I've always been into special effects for movies, growing up, even now. And so I downloaded bought some software that I still remember the name. It was called Ray Dream 3D,
mm,
$100, which was a fortune for me back then.
yeah.
And I just started to learn terrible special effects, to be frank. Made some very funny, terrible videos and
Cool.
animations that took, all night, and they were like 320, 240, and they were not good. Nothing to do with Arch Viz, just kind of creative stuff. And then I stumbled upon an ad for Neoscape, and it was like a word cloud, and it said, "Do you know this software I never heard of?" And I didn't know any of the software, but I reached out anyway.
Yeah.
uh, and I must have called a lot, and finally I got an interview with Rob through persistence. And I said to him, "Listen, I just want to get my foot in the door. You guys are doing really cool things. I can see that from the tour. I'll, clean the bathroom just to get my foot in the door. I don't have any of the skills you're looking for, apparently, but I
Mm,
have, the will and the desire to learn, and I want to do what you guys are doing." So he said, "No one's ever said that before, so let's get started." So the interview was like 8 hours long. I was there the whole day.
oh, wow.
Yeah, we were playing. Rob and I hit it off right away, and it was a good
Mm,
environment. Always has been. We played some video games. There's only six. I think I was the sixth person.
oh,
Um,
okay. Yeah.
a long, long time ago. So met the other owners, Rod and Nils, and Bill at the time. Yeah. So anyway, they just do cool stuff, and I say it like I don't work there anymore.
Mm,
They're always doing cool stuff to me.
yeah.
It's more than just like Arch Viz is the jumping off point for a lot of it, but there's just so many
Mhm.
other things, that Neoscape has added over the years. So it's just always kind of evolving.
Yeah, it's great that you can also bring that sort of variety of interest to the company. I guess, um, like if everyone comes to ArcViz with an architecture background, for example, or an art background, um, it's hard to get different perspectives. So it's great that they thought outside the box to, find someone who is interested in technology and other stuff.
They were very fertile back then in those early days, ownership, but they made some really, and I don't want to consider myself one of these, but they made some hires that really changed the game for them.
Mm,
They were doing great anyway. But then they brought in, Lon Bros. They brought in Rodrigo Lopez, Carlos Cristerna, and others. And things shifted a little bit because there was that Arch Viz focus, of course, but then they start bringing in other people that had other interests and other things that they were really good at, and just kind of augmented and added to what we could provide as far as
yeah.
solutions to our clients. And again, we continue to do this. So yeah, of course, I consider it a key hire around the time that I was hired, because I was hired. Um,
Yeah.
I'm happy to be there at the start when they really got going.
Yeah. That's really smart. And what were the other backgrounds in?
Well, so
Um,
Lon and Rodrigo definitely had architecture backgrounds, but they
mm,
brought some filmmaking to the table as well. I remember Lon immediately just wanted to take on updating our like branding and
mm,
updating our brand. There was nothing wrong with the brand, but it just needed a refresh.
yeah.
There wasn't anyone else in the studio who could have done that. So Lon took it on himself. Again, you could figure it wasn't a startup any stretch, but it kind of was. There was that feeling of
Mm,
any of us can do anything that will help. So Lon wanted to
yep.
do that. We were trying to. The owners were always trying to get our clients to not do the traditional A to Z walkthrough, just kind of walking through a location.
Mm,
And it was a struggle. But then again, with more people and more experience, we started to show off some of the things that were possible, and now they could understand, what we were trying to say.
Yep.
And then we were able to kind of pivot our clients into understanding what was possible.
Yeah. And then you've mentioned you're a sci-fi geek. Do you think that drives your fascination with technology?
Yes, I would. Basic answer. I'll give you a little bit more though, instead of just saying yes. The interesting thing between sci-fi and fantasy, I like them both, is to me, fantasy is past technology that people are maybe has turned into myth, and
Hmm.
it might have been technology based back then, and then sci-fi being whatever is in the future. There's a great YouTube channel that I love called 2 Minute Papers. He's always talking about two papers from this paper. It'll be, incredible. And one of the papers I always reference is that the video of Will Smith eating the spaghetti or the pizza commercial that was made using, AI and all that. And it was
Mm-hmm.
terrible. But I could immediately see, okay, well, again, this is just a start. If anyone
Hmm.
who's laughing at this is missing the point. In about 2 years, this will be incredible. And then it'll be really tough for people to do certain types of jobs when you could just type in a text prompt basically and get a,
Yep.
a custom commercial. I recently
Hmm.
saw an updated pizza commercial from about 18 months later. It looks great. It's not perfect, but it's so close to being a legitimate pizza commercial for, a company.
Oh,
It's
wow.
crazy how good it looks.
Yeah, I remember the one. I feel like it came out like a year or so ago. About it was like beer, and people were drinking beer at a pool party, and it was AI generated. And I think that like I feel like
Yeah.
similar to what you were saying, we were all sort of going, "Well, that guy has 3 arms. What
Yeah.
is this?" But the fact that they could generate that was the point, and that there's only getting better.
Yeah, it's getting really crazy. It's scary, but also I am very much one of my latest focuses at Neoscape has been trying to figure out a way to transition, or not transition, bring AI into the studio, but in a responsible
Hmm.
way.
Yeah,
Neoscape's never going to be creating, AI art and selling it or like producing it as our own, but it does help jumpstart the creative process. So
yeah.
I remember a story from one of the artists. I believe it was, I think it was Corey. He was on a call with a client and they were describing some sort of a shade system for, I believe it was an office building. So during the call, the artist was typing in the description of what, the architect was describing, hit enter, probably in Midjourney, and Midjourney spit back, what it was. He then shared his screen and said, "Oh, is this what you're talking about?" The guy said, "That's exactly right." And then they were able to move on because he still needed to model that and make it his own.
Mm,
At least he could get through that conversation faster,
yeah,
because he wasn't quite sure what he was saying. So just showed him an
yeah.
image and we knew what it was. And those are just the smallest things that help us get to the fun stuff faster.
Yeah, yeah. Is that where you predominantly see AI playing a role in Arch Viz? Like I guess the previs visual visual medium?
Well, from what perspective, I think
Mm,
like companies like Neoscape, we're always going to want to actually, create, if you will, by hand what you're going to see. But I do
mm,
think, companies like ours will have to deal with the threat of, anyone else being able to just type in or drop in a Revit model.
mm.
They give me, for instance, give me 10 Neoscape type models or
Yeah,
render illustrations, and we have a
yeah,
style, of course. So that's scary.
yeah,
So yes, I do think that's where there's a possibility that it's heading and likely will. But there'll always be, I think, that need for that's good for ideation, I think.
hmm,
And when you want to go past that into something different, you'll still need, um, you know, traditional artists.
yeah. How do you think um that people can sort of prevent that risk? Because I think that's a risk for so many studios, an artist of like in different fields of people being able to recreate. Do you think it's a risk? I feel like that was a conversation that's maybe died down a little bit for some reason, whether people don't think it's a risk anymore or whether they think the value of their own handmade work is just more than the AI work. Like, do you see a solution for that in the future, or is it still unknown?
Unknown, but I would say the thing that I've always thought was know your enemy. I'm not saying AI is the enemy.
Mm,
Hard to know how to compete with that with AI, at
Yep.
least until we can't anymore because it's 10,000 times smarter than anyone. But know your enemy and know what the advantages are to using it, so that you could possibly counter those advantages by writing up like, well, here's why it's better to do it this way, but also make your job a little easier, frankly.
Right.
So right now, until we have, we're getting there, but until there are completely custom agents that you can just say, they will know exactly what you're doing. So if we were able to have a 3D, architectural viz artist as an agent that was inside of, ChatGPT and knew exactly what that job was, and you could just say, hey, do this for me. We're not there yet.
Mm.
Understand how that could help you get to the fun stuff of your job faster. So again, you
Yeah.
can create faster, you can create faster, and then use that information just like a mood board, except
Hmm.
instead of just looking through Google Images and trying to find the right text and scrolling to try to find some inspiration, you can literally build your own inspiration on demand.
Hmm.
Get to again your phase of the job, which is now for everyone that does this, the real fun stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great attitude to have. I think it's always good to be, cautious as well as open, right?
Yeah, my one of my many flaws is the eternal optimist. I always see the bright side, and I'm always hoping for the best. So I also have to temper that with, well, it could be that this is so good that it's a real problem for the
Mm.
industry. But you could insert any industry into that, of course.
Yeah.
I think people realize how many jobs are currently in a gray area of, if I'm in school for this, is this even
Hmm.
going to matter?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so it's definitely, I don't want to say scary. It's just it's a potential, it is a technological upheaval, the likes of
Hmm.
which, whatever we know of society now, has not seen.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big shift. I want to talk to you about, real-time technology, because I know that you do a lot of work with, sort of interactive tools and using Unreal Engine. And find it fascinating, and I also do as well. What I'd like to discuss what you think the benefits of real time for Arch Viz are.
For the very first time, I was playing.
Yeah.
I'm a big video game person as well. And back in 2004 or five, we were using Unreal Championship Edition, I think, to bring in some very rich person who owns Amazon. It wasn't Amazon, eBay, something like that. We brought his penthouse into Unreal Championship Edition and screwed around in there. From that moment, and again, all the video gaming, I knew this would change everything because I love the traditional 2D viz that we execute. I love the films that we make and others, of course. But being
Mhm.
able to then hand someone basically a controller and say, explore the space, at your will. I mean, there's nothing that beats that. And then
Yep.
the ability to, if you build it correctly, of course, and if the client needs it, or, again, all these parameters, but that is very fun. And you can learn a lot about the space that way. But then the ability to possibly then throw a headset on, and now you
Mhm.
understand the actual scale. That really gives you the feel of the space when you're looking at scale. That changes everything. Again, it's another layer of information. The other thing we
Yep.
talk about a lot too is like the sales process for some of our clients.
Mm.
Meaning, you start with a beautiful ad, hopefully that we've created, either a digital ad or a scrim on a building that leads them to the website. You give them a little bit more information on the website, again, that hopefully we've built. And then you reach out through the contact form, they bring you into the marketing center.
Mhm.
Now you're looking at a real-time model. Then you're putting on maybe a headset. Maybe the salesperson has an iPad app. You're getting completely just, covered in the experience of this building. And
Mhm.
each additional layer that is provided during that marketing funnel gives you a deeper understanding of the project. And
Mhm.
ideally, if it's not built yet, of course, walking around it then is the ultimate. But if it's not built yet, throwing that headset on or looking at it in a gigantic 85-inch or 100-inch screen or a 16-foot by 9-foot video wall that we also work with,
Mhm.
nothing beats it. And again, moving
Yeah.
through it at your own, command, and someone says, "Hey, go down that hallway. What's down there? How do I get over there?" And just maneuvering. It's pretty great.
Yeah. Do you ever find it difficult to sell an idea for interactive features or like design tools to clients?
Yeah, absolutely. Working at Neoscape for 24 or 5 years, I've got a million
Mm.
stories. But here's one that I'll never forget, and it's something I take with me. I'm still here, I'm saying, but I just always remember it. It happened with me and Rob McLeod, president of
Mhm.
Neoscape. When the iPad was first announced, I told Neoscape that the iPhone and subsequently the iPad would be, obviously, gigantic products, and that our
Mhm.
clients would have them. So we should be in front of, like everyone else, maybe catching up late, possibly, and we
Mhm.
should be developing our stuff to work on these devices because our clients will have them. And so they're going to say to us, "Hey, nice website, we love it. Can this run on my phone? Let's make sure
Mm.
that it can. So let's make them custom apps, like make sure we're working on all the responsive things." So when the iPad was announced, we were trying to get clients to buy iPads from us because we saw them as the perfect sales tool. Instead
Mhm.
of carrying around a bunch of illustrations and books and the architectural plans, etc., and try to describe the stack, you could just bring your iPad and it would have everything. And at the
Mhm.
same time, you could also plug it into a big TV and use it that way, right? Great presentation tool. We couldn't get anyone to bite. So Rob said to me, after months of trying to get people to understand this and like why they needed it, Rob said, "Okay, Evan, go ahead and just make one. Let's use this project that we finished for
Mhm.
like an interactive kiosk, but
Yep.
translated to an iPad. Obviously, they need to see it to truly understand it. So we made that first iPad app. We gave it to the client and said, "Hey, we just made this for you because I don't remember exactly what Rob said, but we just gave it to them." But that was the app that we were then able to show everyone else. So the lesson there
Mhm.
was, of course, we might be able to see things that others can't see, and maybe it's so new, and maybe it's a failure on my part that I'm unable to translate the vision
Mhm.
such that they understand they should risk possibly $100,000 on something. Uh,
Sure.
so we build the prototype of
Yep.
almost everything we do, and that's what gets us to those next levels. And as we get deeper into newer technology, the prototypes get more and more complex.
Mhm.
We've done a bunch of prototypes in Unreal that in a good way have led to successive more and more like impressive jobs as far as their functionality. It's because we keep working on these prototypes to try to keep adding features and functionality from the 30 years of experience that we have, knowing what brokers are looking for, knowing what developers want to see, knowing what the public wants to see. We keep
Yeah.
adding all these tools that we've made in other interactive environments, and we're adding them into real time at this point to get people
Yeah.
to kind of offer, anyone really can offer the breadth of services across all of the deliverables.
Yeah, I think it's really smart, obviously, to make prototypes because, like you said, it can be very difficult to describe to someone who can't visually understand what you're describing with words. To make the prototype, has Neoscape always taken this idea of investing in the R&D time to get the payoff of having the prototype, or has that been because I know in some companies I've worked at, there's always been, yes, we want to do the R&D, but we can't, set aside the money or the time right now. And then they don't have it to
Yeah.
sell.
So that is something that every company has to deal with. I think maybe I've discovered like a secret though, but now I'm telling everyone. Here's what I like to do, and I do this with Rod all the time. I will say to him, "Okay, so we sold this iPad app, for example, or an Unreal experience for this much money, and this is the feature set. I think we can do something really cool here, though. It's not on the contract. The client doesn't even know about it, but of course, we'll introduce it to them during the process. It's going to take us more time because we have to figure it out. However, we'll be able to sell that to everyone else. So
Mm,
that R&D is baked in to the, not to the price. Yep. So again, we can't just go crazy.
yep.
He'll understand. I'll explain the risk and reward of it, of course, and I don't always get the heads up of or the yes, you can do that. He might say that's a little too much of a risk right now.
Hmm.
But for the most part, if I present a solid enough plan, for what it is and how we're going to get it done, and like the plan to get it done and the benefit, Neoscape has always been great about saying go ahead and go do it, go out there and
Yep.
figure because it usually pays off.
Yeah. 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 I think it's a great way to look for a company, right? Especially with technology. I think you always have to be a little bit ahead of what the projects are allowing you to do so that you can show people, right?
Yeah, and being in a meeting where someone says, "Have you heard of this?" and I haven't heard of it is my nightmare. It
Yeah.
happens extremely rarely, but that doesn't necessarily mean I'm doing a good job. It just might be that they don't know yet.
Yeah.
So I like the opposite, where I bring, those ideas to them,
Yeah.
including, within Neoscape, as well as our clients.
What do you like most about working with clients?
Probably solving their problem. So in the end, you could, if you want to be reductive, you could say that it's kind of the same kind of a job every time. There's a building or a series of buildings going up, and they need help, or they're being refurbished, etc. Um, and again, yes, at some level, sure. But then there's all the unique aspects of that property, or again, the position the client is in, trying to raise financing, or get it leased up. They need a specific solution. Yes, the
Mhm.
parts are kind of the same, but there's always that unique twist to everything that makes it fun and always interesting. When I was doing signs, like I said, I was writing for sale for 5 years.
Right.
It got very boring. The
The
phone,
actual words for sale.
right?
Yep.
And I had red or black I could use for a color. This is not that at all. There are so many issues in a good way. The technology is different. Their IT is different. Their security is different. Every city is different. Dealing with that. The brokers are always different. So it's nice to get a little bit of a name where people will come back and say, "Oh, Evan, remember we worked on this together? I want one of
Mhm.
those." That's always nice, because then you can just start somewhere quickly, but then you still give them something new that they've never seen before, hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like the problem solving, like it never gets old if, if there's always new things people want.
Yeah, it's the eternal puzzle. And because I also program, and that's one of the best parts of programming is it can be done so
Mhm.
many different ways. There are ways that are more preferred than others, of course.
Mhm.
But generally, you can kind of mix and match whatever you want to do to get something done. And it's very much like that with our clients. They present a unique problem that they need you to solve, and they're looking for assistance. And so then they're basically saying, go, noodle on this until you can come up with a solution that hopefully gives them what they want. And that's the best part.
Yeah. So you do programming too? Did you teach yourself how to do that, or
I
did you
did,
study it?
yeah. Just always fascinated by it. I did some really, again, early stuff when I was younger, buying computer magazines where you had to literally type in, 1,000 lines of basic or whatever to get a simple text adventure
Yeah.
running. It was around the time of when they announced the iPhone. I'd never had any training or anything, and I said to the company, "This is again going to be huge. Can I try to figure out how to program for this?" And they said, "Sure, go ahead." And so I bought some books and all that. I should also note I was helped. This guy, Mark Johnson, good friend of Neoscape, worked there like as a contractor early on. He ended up leaving the company and moving to New York. Not leaving the company because he was a contractor, but he left the
Mhm.
co-located space, and he moved to New York. And they had already sold a new project that needed. It was in Director, if you remember Director, old tech. So I said, I'll figure it out. I'll try.
Right.
But Mark was integral. We had very many late night phone calls where he was basically teaching me the basics of,
That's amazing.
programming. And then from there, I just kept, picking it up. I dabbled though. Like I've programmed a lot, and I've made, tons of things. However, it's just that like surface level of, like a prototype to then hand it off to the really talented people on our team that then build it
Yeah.
correctly. So
Yeah.
messing around trying to build things that kind of show off what might be possible, but then, other people come in and do it right.
Yeah, I think that's a really great skill to have, though, especially if you're trying to think of new things and new tools to be able to sort of, muck it up, essentially, briefly. Like,
Yeah.
this is roughly how it should work.
And then laugh at the code, but then please build it, correctly. I
Yeah.
was recently using some AI tools to build something quickly. Uh,
Mm.
Again, just so I could show, what was possible. We're trying to add a feature to our Unreal experiences that will help our clients and also help us understand how people are using, the experience. It's a lot like Google Analytics for Unreal.
Yeah.
Not as deep as that, of course, but we want some additional data. So we had a couple of meetings. We kind of flow charted it out, and then I just very quickly went to I think it was Claude, not ChatGPT, and asked it to build a very simple example of this prototype, which it did.
Well,
It's living up on our server. And now we're going to be, next week or the next 2 weeks showing that to, again, the real programmers.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, here's how it's supposed to generally work. Here's the data that we're already collecting. Now let's set it up correctly on the back end and the front end to make something that we can actually offer our clients.
Yeah. I was going to ask about AI code. How do programmers, like, is it very easily translatable? Do programmers see AI code and say, okay, I can reprogram that? Or do you think they find it a little frustrating?
Um,
If you don't know.
Interesting question. I used to a lot to when I'm unpacking that puzzle and trying to build something. I try to, of course, be completely organized and neat as I'm like slowly building out whatever it is. But eventually, either deadlines come in or time crunches, etc., and I start to program a lot faster and messier. So when I'm done, I like to dump it into these tools and just ask it to clean it up, not recode it or refactor it, just literally organize it.
Oh,
Comments in, and because it's very smart, it knows what I'm trying to do, so the comments are always right on.
yeah.
And then it'll usually make suggestions at the end, like here's what you probably should do differently. But again, a lot of what I'm building is just trying to get something done. So, but I do want comments because there is so much that's being built, at Neoscape. When you go back to it 2 months later, it's very easy to not, okay, what was I thinking when I built this, right? So that little bit of organizational layer that the AI provides at the end is very helpful.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's cool that it does that. What do you do to make sure that you stay on top of new technology and stay creative? Do you ever find that difficult?
Sure. Because otherwise it sounds crazy to say no. But the things that I like to do for hobbies, again, just align with what my job is at work. So I go to all the same, it changes, but I go to all the same websites. I'm on Reddit, I'm on YouTube, I'm looking at all these things. I subscribe to a bunch of newsletters from people that are doing really cool things that, again, have nothing to do with necessarily Arch Viz, but again, might be something I can translate. So it's not that bad because I like to do it anyway.
Yeah.
And it's an old and tired trope, but it doesn't feel like a job. Sometimes it does, of course. No job is perfect, but for the most part, it does not feel like a job, and it never has.
Yeah. I mean, that's the best kind, really, because then you're not finding yourself, struggling to look for things. I suppose there's always times where you have to put yourself into places to find new information, maybe faster than normal, especially, do you think, like with AI, for example, you noticed things changing very quickly and you'd have to, kick yourself into action to keep up? I mean, you're saying that you were interested anyway, so maybe you didn't have to force yourself. Yeah.
I was looking at AI, 18 months ago. I was using a tool called, it could have been longer. The pandemic really changed like my time frame. So I'm actually not sure. It could have been longer. It was a tool called Jasper, and then I think they renamed it to Jarvis, I think. But it was one of the first things I'd seen where you could put in, some code and a large language model, and it would spit out, something for you. So I was using it a little bit early on, again, just to try to improve something that I'd written, or again, to get me started on the creation process of something else. And then I really started to deep dive into, okay, what's going on here? How does this even work? Because, into stuff like that. So and then I started having a bunch of lunch and learns at the company, showing all sorts of AI tools and trying to get people to understand what was coming and getting them, into it. So I held some like seminars on ChatGPT and, again, cobbling together a bunch of tips and tricks from all the things that I'd seen on like the ways to use ChatGPT. Because like writing the proper prompt is really what gets you a lot of the way there. And there's a skill for prompt writing for sure. I was trying to teach people how to think about writing prompts.
How did you learn it? Did you learn it just by, because that's the thing that I find very difficult. Is it like it's like learning a language? Did you do it by trial and error, or did you like read information about it?
All of that, plus to your point about it, it's like a language. In a lot of ways, it feels like a bit of a programming language, writing a proper prompt, at least the way they initially wanted you to write them.
Yeah.
So it wasn't nothing that it was easy. But I kind of felt like I was in the pocket early on of how they expected me to write something. And it was also pretty obvious from the early days of like where it would fall apart. Like if I would write in a prompt and it would give me a terrible result, I was like, okay, that's on me. I don't think I,
Mm.
kind of couched that correctly for what they were expecting. It's getting a
Yep.
lot easier now. They're much better, but those early days, yeah. But again, I watched a bunch of videos and of course read some online stuff to try to figure out, how these things worked and
Mhm.
how to properly present what you were looking for.
Yeah.
And again, just
Yeah.
for me, like I just was interested, you know,
Yeah.
I knew this is going to be huge in our industry. So let's start bringing it to the forefront. And I'm happy to say too now, and there were other people doing it as well, of course, at our company, but now it comes up a lot we have our project closeouts. And one of the questions is, was any AI used in this project?
Hmm.
And we're getting more and more instances of, again, during that early part ideation, kind of thinking about what the project might be. It is being used to try to jumpstart the rest of our process.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. I think that's interesting to see how people are using some AI tools as well. I want to talk to you a bit about you said that you've worked at Neoscape for 24 to 25 years,
Yeah.
which is which is great. And it's also not so common in our industry. A lot of people move around from studio to studio. What do you think that you've learned from staying in the same company for more than 20 years? I mean, could you imagine?
Yeah. Well, certainly I have an understanding of like the processes and like the of what we do across all of the disciplines at a very, high level. I'm not I don't work on the brand team, I'm not on the digital
Mm.
marketing team, but I just have an understanding and in some ways I've helped like form what some of these processes are. Again,
Mm-hmm.
just because I've been there so long. And people have been hired, of course, that are experts that have now completely redone it the way that it should be. But I've been early on to know kind of how things are connected,
Yep.
which has helped. Of course, the relationships. There's always turnover at a company, of course, but be able to build some long-term relationships. I've also seen, I would say, early Evan needed more time to uh, learn empathy for our clients.
Mm.
Young Evan didn't have a lot of empathy for like the client's perspective and like the problems that they were dealing with. Um,
Yeah.
I had
Can
a
you
lot.
describe that a bit more?
Well, you have to work late, and
Mm.
it's because the client needs something, that a change on something,
Yep.
and young Evan was like, ah, like, what's the big deal with whatever this might have been? Well,
Mm.
of course, maybe $1 billion project rides on, that door not being read.
Mhm.
It can come down to that sometimes, right? So, and it's not always about money. But I needed to understand their perspective. I was only ever seeing it. Again, I was 20, whatever, but yeah, I didn't have any of that perspective. But there were people at Neoscape, Dick Casey being one. I worked a lot with both Rob, Rod, and Nils, the three owners at the time. Now we've got a few others, but just over time, learning more about the client side of things as I got exposed to more, client
Mm.
meetings and like actually running the meetings, etc. And now I
Yeah.
understand both sides a lot better than I might
Mm.
have gotten that, of course, just through experience working at different studios. Don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
but I could always connect everything to where I'm at. Like I'm always connecting it to the location I'm in.
Yep.
I think that's very helpful for me.
Yeah. I definitely think, once I started working more and more with clients, I understood that empathy thing that you're describing a lot more where, you see things from a client's perspective. And it's very different. I think when you first start as an artist, you sort of take the things that you're working on to be your own. Like, this is my image. Why are they ruining it with their requests? Without thinking about the fact that the client's asked you for something and you're trying to make that thing for them.
Yeah, it is a service business. So you're
Mm.
ultimately trying to make, whatever it is they've asked you to make. They're paying you literally to do that. They, of course, are also asking you to bring what you bring to the table. But
Yep.
sometimes you need to make some accommodations that maybe were not, your first choice, but it's what
Mm.
they need. So you got to just kind of step away from that. I learned that, well, not too long ago, but still, that was definitely early, like you said, where I'm like, I don't know if I agree with that, inside my head. Uh,
Mm.
but it doesn't, you know, customer's always right.
Yeah. Where do you think job titles stand? And we touched upon it at the beginning. I talked about this with another friend of mine on the podcast, actually. Um, and we were talking about job titles and whether having a more senior job title actually, does something to your career. Is it actually that important? Because I feel like we put a lot of emphasis on it, like, artists do and, senior members of company do. Do you think it has a important role?
I do. I think, well, at least at Neoscape, I guess I'll stick to at Neoscape. Titles are, I think, the most helpful from an outward, client-facing perspective. Like, who are they dealing with,
Right.
and what is their, when I was younger, I thought titles were basically for me, not
Hmm.
realizing that there was a large part of that was to help clients understand, like the structure and hierarchy of, when they meet you, what you do. But I do think also that it's still important that people can see progression in their
Yep.
careers, and certainly generally speaking across all jobs, the more senior your title, generally the better off you're doing, in your career.
Mm.
So that ladder is important, to know that you're moving up. I've had a
Yeah.
position at Neoscape where in a way, the position was created, by me during just me working there. Um, like I just kind of fell into it a little bit, I guess. Just doing the things that I do. So I don't know where the ladder is, necessarily for me, but I'm also not that concerned about it because I still like to do, what it is I do. But
Yeah.
not everyone else has that situation. So I think it is important for them to know kind of the structure and where they can continue to move. It's something that on the interactive team, which has grown to be, quite a few people, we're
Yep.
always looking at like, okay, what's the structure? How's everyone laid out? Where is that person expected to move? What are they thinking about? Do we have room for that position? Is there an obvious progression for them? Because we don't
Yeah.
want people to think they're stuck. And okay, I've worked at Neoscape for however many years, and I guess
Yeah.
that's all I'll ever be. Some people are okay with that, by the way. Uh,
Yeah.
they're happy to just do what they do, and there's nothing wrong with that. Or nope, I want to keep building on my career and my experience, and changing their titles.
Yeah, and as someone who is, on the senior end of that, department, do you look at, more junior members and try and encourage a progression, or do you also allow? Because I think that's an interesting thing that you brought up, that some people are very happy to stay where they are, and I found in my experience, I've worked at different companies, and some companies are not happy for you to stay doing what you're doing, which is interesting, and some companies are not very good at helping you progress. I guess you can speak only to Neoscape, but like, do you find that like you're conscious of that with your employees?
Going back to that empathy thing of learning about that over time, I
Mm.
would think that that also extends to others, on my team as I've grown. That's the other benefit to 20, whatever, 3 years at
Mm.
Neoscape is, just seeing the changes within myself. As the team has grown, the role has, kind of changed. But we've also hired people, that are on my team that have helped me to say and see, hey, you got to see the bigger picture, and
Hmm.
try to help lift everyone up. So it's never it's something that we're cognizant of. It has to be worked on. It's a
Mm.
percentage of your day that you just have to mentor people and try to and Neoscape has never gotten in the way of anyone trying
Yeah.
to expand their capabilities. We're always happy to have someone, hey, I want to try to do this. And again, we try, although it's I would say an internal, struggle, something that's a evolving thing that we're always working on. How do we help them map that out,
Hmm.
so that again it's clear like what the path might be? Because it's just, I mean, there's so many different disciplines, at
Yeah.
Neoscape, and as you can imagine, it's everyone's got their own thing going on. This is nothing new to
Yeah.
this, but it's a constant challenge to to just try to be aware and try to be helpful, to
Yeah.
the team so that they feel like there's an opportunity if they want it to continue to progress. Like again, no one's like ever standing in the way of that progression, but you
Yeah.
also need to like, water it and prune it. You can't just, you have to always
Yes.
be kind of on it.
Yeah. Do you think with the emergence of new tools, like with AI tools, like interactive tools and like interactive department, are there new titles being born? Do you find yourself having to make, new job titles?
Yes, yeah, and something that's interesting is it can be helpful when these titles map across to other industries. So when people learn that you're a 3D game programmer, as an example,
Mm.
that's pretty easily understood. But the issue is, for example, we don't make games,
Yep.
but that's just me saying that technically they're all interactive experiences. But
Mm.
if someone was a 3D interactive experience person, that title doesn't really tell people what is going on. And if that person does move on to a different position at a different studio at doing something else, it would be helpful if that title was already there. No, I did this for them, for
Yes.
5 years, right? So we are constantly looking at, the titles, and we're
Yep.
currently kind of thinking about the reorg of those titles right
Yep.
now because of, again, how things have shifted with what we do. And I think that is also constantly evolving and evergreen. Because again, like I was saying about, we have somebody at Neoscape, Ali Lindquist. She's the art design director for Neoscape. She is phenomenal at her job, and especially at bringing people like up through the company and building structure for them, and they're always very clear on like where they're going. Again, by knowing her for, I actually don't know because I'm bad with time. I'll say 8 years. She's helped me to understand again why the need for that, and trying to
Mm.
provide that for the people in my team as well.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think it's great when companies are cognizant of that, because I think that's a thing that they can fail sort of young artists a lot when they feel like, oh, where do I go with this? And I want to go somewhere with this. Um, Thank you so much for being really like open and like discussing it. I think it's really interesting to talk, especially someone of, your senior level to with the experience that you have. Something I'd love to close on, just does the metaverse interest you? And like, do you think that that has a role in Arc Viz at all?
Yes, I would say that I'm interested in any concept or tool or environment that brings artists and their clients together in a
Mm.
shared space. There's a lot of siloing in the tech that we're in.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, they're working to get away from that, but we're not there
Yep.
yet. Which is again the whole one of the main things I like about the metaverse is that idea of just like that movie, Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. That thing.
Yes.
That's the best part about it is that seamlessness between what you're building and where you can show it. I know there's many other ways you could look at the metaverse, but that one
Hmm.
aspect of it is what I'm most interested in.
Yeah. You're, are you like, I think that you're really interested in bringing different, different elements to ArcViz. That it's not just architecture. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep. The easier that, well, so in the early years, there was always sometimes there were roadblocks that were just insurmountable because of the silos. It was just impossible. You couldn't even do what you wanted to do.
Yeah.
Those have been falling over the years.
Mm.
I think if we do get to that place where, I'll just use a simple example, the USD format, or like Apple's is USDZ, that format being adopted by everyone. And again, this is my opinion, right? I'm sure there's many other opinions about this, but that one step of having those models have everything, those environments, those scenes, having everything you need that you can then put anywhere, simplified, but will just make things a lot better for what I'm trying to do for my clients. And of course, I think it'll help everyone else with whatever they're trying to do, especially like, designers and other people outside of 3D and VR and AR and stuff like that, being able to collaborate together, likely, of course, in real time, interactively. So that whiteboard is now a world.
Yeah.
That's incredibly exciting.
Yeah. And one closing question for you. What new technology would you like to see available for visualization in the future?
That
Is there
new,
anything?
yeah, the new part is interesting. This is the only question that I struggled with. I was thinking about this. when before in our little intro there.
Yeah, because I'll preface it with, the idea of looking to sci-fi, for example, and there are things that are possible in books and in films that, I'd love to see that happening. Like I remember reading different books that, kind of early VR was based on, and then seeing people say, okay, let's make a haptic glove, let's make this, let's make that, let's make the metaverse. I'm wondering if there's anything that you have read about or seen in the films that you think, I'd love to be able to bring this specifically into Arch Viz. Or that's an open question. We can come back to this in a couple of years.
I have an answer with a caveat of it's already here though. It's just not affordable yet. Everything's usually here. It's not affordable. It's in
Sure.
like a black project somewhere. The transparent screens, which are now becoming more and more prevalent and in the news. A couple of years ago, so it's not that new. I was looking at some examples of that, and I do think there are unique possibilities for some of our clients for that to be an interesting solution to some of their problems. And
Yeah.
it's becoming less expensive and will be a wider rollout, I guess. And I do have ideas for those types of screens that can only be done with those types of screens. I don't have one yet, though.
Right. Yeah, that's really interesting. So that would be for presentation, I suppose.
Yes, and yes, for sure. And then the angles of the screens would be different depending on what you're doing. That would be very interesting. If you consider a physical model, a transparent screen, augmented with other tech, you could do some really fun, but also informative. That's the most important thing. You got to get the info. Sometimes you want to, shock and awe with just some really crazy looking cool stuff. But then after that, you need to actually, they need to learn about the project so they can write that tech or feel confident enough to, well, again, either invest or put down money to live there and work there. So, yeah, I think there's a great possibility for that tech.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's really interesting. Thank you so much, Evan, for coming on the podcast. I mean, I feel like I could keep talking to you about different technology, and you have this big world of knowledge and experience, which is fascinating, and I hope continues to expand and expand. That's awesome.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a very fast. It was so easy to talk to you, and it was just a conversation, which was great.
Yeah, I hope to keep doing this podcast. So if I do, we'll see. I feel like, especially talking about new technology, I'd love to revisit in the future and see what's actually, this conversation could be like completely different in like 2 years' time, for example.
It's true. 18 months to 2 years is going to be even crazier now. You're absolutely right. We won't even be us in the call. We'll be, those personas will
Yeah.
have like something. It'll be insane.
We'll just be avatars, basically, and they'll be like people watching. And well, thank you so much. It's been great.